My guest today is Dr. Yaron Brook. Dr. Brook is one of the world's leading voices on Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism and its application to politics, culture, and economics. He is the chairman of the board of the Ayn Rand Institute, a globally sought-after speaker known for his clear, passionate defense of individual rights, capitalism, and reason. Originally from Israel, Yaron holds a PhD in finance from the University of Texas at Austin. He was for many years a finance professor and co-founder of the investment firm BH Equity Research. But his deeper calling has always been philosophical advocacy. He is the author and co-author of several books, including Free Market Revolution with Don Watkins, Equal is Unfair, America's Misguided Fight Against Income Inequality, also with Don Watkins, and In Pursuit of Wealth, The Moral Case for Finance. In addition to these publications, Yaron teaches a wide global audience through the Yaron Brook Show, a long-running podcast and live stream that tackles current events, philosophical questions, and cultural commentary from an objectivist perspective. His YouTube channel has tens of thousands of subscribers and millions of views. Yaron travels extensively, lecturing at universities, think tanks, and conferences around the world. His goal is not just to promote political reform, but to help revive a moral revolution in defense of reason, individualism, and human flourishing. Since it was Yaron who introduced me to objectivism 6 years ago, I am delighted to have him as my guest today. To paraphrase Ayn Rand's reference to Victor Hugo in her introduction to his novel 93, I will say, Yaron made it possible for me to discover the philosophy I now live by and seek to fully understand and advocate. If this podcast helps another young, ambitious, intelligent person to discover objectivism, then I shall regard it as a payment on an incalculable debt that can never be computed or repaid. Dr. Yaron Brook, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for that introduction. That was great.
I first heard you speak on YouTube in 2019, and I recently found the speech. I think maybe it was the University of Exeter. I thought originally that it was a speech in Singapore. But in any case, here I am. It's 6 years later, back in 2019, after listening to you, I found Ayn Rand, listened to many of her speeches, listened to Leonard Peikoff's speeches, then read The Fountainhead. And now 6 years later, I've finished my philosophy bachelor's degree. I've done my master's in bioethics. Now I'm enrolled in the top philosophy graduate program in the Southern Hemisphere. So I really wouldn't be here if I hadn't discovered objectivism, and I don't know if I would have discovered it if not for you. So
that's fantastic. It makes everything that I do worthwhile. This is what I do it for.
Well, let's talk about that. That's kind of what I want to talk all about today. I think your job is really cool. You fly around the world and argue with people, which is kind of my dream career too.
It is cool. It's very cool. I enjoy it, and I get to speak for a living. I get to debate for a living, and I do get to travel around the world and see the world as part of that. So you're not going to get any complaints from me.
Mm-hmm. So you've been all around the world. You've spoken with objectivist audiences, non-objectivist audiences, people who are actively antagonistic to objectivism, and I think mostly what I want to focus on today is not so much the things that anyone can go to your show to get, because if they want great takes on politics, economics, they should just check out your show. That's what you talk about every day. But what I want to focus on today is what you learned about spreading objectivism, kind of where we're at when it comes to the objectivist movement. I think you can provide some really good insights on that. So that's what we're going to concentrate on today.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Tell me about what works and what doesn't work when spreading ideas, particularly objectivist ideas.
I mean, it's very hard to tell, because the real point is the different things work on different people. Different people respond to different things. Sometimes what works is creating cognitive dissonance, shocking people into, what? He said that? How could that be? And then forcing them to think about it and consider it. And that sends them on a path of discovery, because how could somebody say that? And I think what's important is even if you say very, very controversial things, to be articulate, to have a smile on your face, to kind of not come across as some nasty, horrible human being, to just be a nice, decent human being, but then to say something controversial, and that creates that cognitive dissonance, and it forces people to think. Sometimes that's what does it, and for some people, other times it's just a reasoned argument. It's just laying out the facts, and here it is, and they go, "Oh wow, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Let me go check it out." I mean, one of the things you realize as a public speaker is you're not going to convince anybody of anything in a speech or in a interview or in anything like that. All you can do is get them to think. All you can do is get them to go and explore, to go read a book, to go listen to a podcast, to take another step, to go and research some more. You're not trying to, at the end of your talk, everybody's going to say, "Yes, sir, we agree with you 100%." That would be bizarre. It would be like brainwashing. What you want is people to walk out of a talk or a podcast a little confused, challenged, but wanting more, and that's the key. Wanting to interact with these ideas more and to go investigate and to research more. So that's the job as a public speaker. It's to provoke thought.
Yeah, I also recently came to that realization, all too recently, that you cannot change someone's mind in the course of one conversation, however brilliant the arguments are. It's just not respecting the facts around how people actually change their views.
Yes, and look, it's disrespectful to the other person, right? They have to go through a process. It takes a process to change your mind. It's not, you can't spoon feed knowledge to somebody. You can't spoon feed philosophy into somebody. You can give them facts, you can give them an argument, but they have to think about it. And thinking requires time. Thinking requires effort. It's not something you just do in a conversation. There's some thinking going on, but they have to contemplate, they have to think, they have to integrate, and thinking, a big part of thinking is integrating, is taking this new piece of knowledge, integrating with everything else that I know. That takes time and that takes active engagement. So no, it's not, it really isn't possible to, in any kind of fundamental way, to change somebody's mind in just a conversation. It takes them to do the work, and they have to go away and do the work.
And our culture doesn't encourage doing that work, right? Particularly, I mean, for the more seasoned objectivists, they might know about the dim hypothesis and the whole idea of disintegration in knowledge. But the general idea is that our culture discourages putting things together, putting disparate ideas together. In science, you see this too. It's like people will say, well, I'm only a specialist in this little area. And that's, of course, it's good to be aware of what you are and are not a specialist in, but you still have to integrate all your knowledge into one totality, right?
That's what thinking is about. To a large extent, thinking is integration. So much of thinking is integration, and you know, a good mind is a mind that is constantly integrating. You get a new piece of evidence. How does that fit? How does that fit into all of my knowledge, not into this little piece? And to live a good life is to live an integrated life, to live a life where your knowledge and your actions are fully integrated, and that takes constant work. And we live in a culture that teaches the opposite. It teaches disintegration. So you see that, as you said, in medicine and in sciences. People become specialists in some narrow field and they're not interested in anything else. And the special field has no relation to their life and no relation to anything else. And every part of their life is kind of separate from everything, compartmentalized from everything else. And that's tragic, because I don't think you can really achieve happiness or fulfillment as a human being living that kind of way. You want your work and your home life and your hobbies and your loves to all be integrated into one. You want them not to be to contradict one another, but to be integrated with one another. But that takes work and that takes conscious effort. And most people don't know that that's what's supposed to. I mean, the only people who do it are like religionists do it. They try to integrate everything around a religion or something like that. But then it's a false integration, because they're integrating around something that's not true, a God that doesn't exist. we have to integrate as advocates of reason. We have to integrate around reality, around facts, around what's real, and using reason. And that's rare. And again, most of the culture is in some form of disintegration, and you see that in people's lives all the time.
That's right. The only integration going on, or most of it, is misintegration. And I think you made this point on Lex Friedman as well, about how academics are sequestered into their little kind of tiny little specializations. And that's definitely true in philosophy. I'm in academic philosophy now, and you do see that and it's so ironic that it's in philosophy, which is supposed to be the love of wisdom.
Exactly. It's completely upside down. Philosophy should be the field that helps us integrate every other field, and it should be the area where you're taking a big picture view of life and of the world and of reality, and to specialize and to focus. I mean, there's nothing wrong with specializing in philosophy, but only in the context of a broad perspective and a broad integration, not as an escape from that integration, escape from that perspective, which I think for most philosophers that is true.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to ask a very broad question. So, you spend all your time professionally looking at the world and trying to interpret things from an objectivist perspective, and you're tracking the culture very closely. You're tracking it kind of down in, so to speak, the epistemic trenches of the culture, right? It's a brutal job, I suppose, because you're exposed to all the evil that's going on in the world, and you have to think about it. But on the other hand, you're also exposed to a lot of the good. So I want to ask you about what do you think is the most concerning thing in summary in the world right now? I don't mean any concrete political event, just some general attitude, and then we'll do the opposite. So what is the best thing going on in the world?
Well, I mean, the most concerning thing is the rejection of reason across the entire political spectrum. That is the fact that reason is no longer viewed as a standard. It used to be that some people at least pretended to be pro-reason, the liberals, the center left, center right liberals, or however you want to call it, liberals in European sense, or even liberals some liberals in the American sense. And that for the large, they become very small and insignificant. And today, our political world is dominated, and our educational world is dominated by people who reject reason, either in the name of religion, tradition, or which tend to be on the right, or in the name of emotion and or nature or something. On the left, that tend to be on the left, although the differences between left and right are blurring. Because at the end of the day, once you reject religion, or once you reject reason, all you're left with is emotion. So they're all emotionalists at the end of the day, and I think that's the biggest danger and biggest trend. Emotionalists can be easily manipulated. That is the trend towards authoritarianism and towards political parties that are authoritarian. They can be controlled. This is the kind of COVID lockdowns, or I think emotionalism and the rejection of reason is probably the number one concern that I have, and of course that is linked together with the rejection of individualism and any kind of sense of self-interest, of egoism, whatever remnant of egoism came out of the Enlightenment and the idea of pursuit of happiness. I think that is fading as because of the kind of the rejection of reason, we become more and more tribal, and tribalism comes to dominate our politics. So we lose our individual character and our individual identity into the tribe, into the collective. So those I think are the worst things happening in the world today.
Right. And I don't think people appreciate fully the connection between reason and a rational conception of selfishness, because often reason is thought of as something that say, a scientist does because they're somehow detached from any kind of personal interest. I was actually reading an article just yesterday that I'm supposed to teach a class on, which is basically on this, that takes this kind of premise, this false premise. What do you think is wrong with that conception of rationality?
Well, I mean, reason is adherence to reality. Reason is adherence to facts. Reason is that it tells us to use logic in trying to understand the world and you know, integrate it and gain a real understanding of it. And in order for one to live, in order for one to be successful at life, that is something one has to apply to every aspect of one's life. That is, if it's true that reason allows us to discover truth in science through observing reality and, you know, trying to understand reality and then testing our hypothesis, testing our views and coming to conclusions about truth and reality. Well, that is true in science, but that is also true in everything that we do in life. You know, ultimately, we learn from observing reality, from integrating or inducing truth from reality, and then you know, verifying that truth, verifying causal relationships through processes of deduction and processes of experimentation, of testing, of looking. And that's true of every aspect of the life. You know, a baby learns this, you know, learns this fairly, you can see babies doing this all the time, right? They'll touch the stove once, right? They don't know. They don't have a hypothetical about the stove. They don't have knowledge implanted in their brain, stove hot, don't touch. They touch it and it burns and they don't do it again. And they drop objects and they don't accept it. You know, the burning, they often accept it on the first try because it's so painful. But with dropping objects, they don't accept that gravity works every time. So they'll drop it again and the parent will pick it up and they'll drop it again. And the parent will pick it up. And that's reason. That's inaction. They are experimenting. They are testing. Will this phenomena occur? And two phenomena there. One phenomena is, will every time I drop it, will it fall? And will my parent always pick it up? Can I manipulate my parents that way? So, you know, they've got two hypotheses that they're testing, and ultimately they'll come to an induction. They'll say, okay, yeah, it looks like every time I'll drop something, it will actually fall. Later on, when they're adults or when they're teenagers, they'll learn about the concept of gravity. And they'll gain a much deeper understanding of something they understood when they were two, or even when they were one. You know, they understand the basic concept. So, reason is how we learn about the world, every aspect of the world. So, what, you know, how do human beings achieve happiness? What is a productive career? You know, what is a trustworthy human being and what's a not trustworthy human being? All of that is gained through observation, thinking, studying, integrating our knowledge, and you know, about human beings and about our experiences with human beings, and we discover truths about that, just like in any other field. So reason is necessary for every single aspect of our life. There's no aspect of life where reason is unnecessary. So it's true that it is, you know, your emotions should not dictate your reasoning, but your emotions are not your interests. That is, your interests guide your reasoning in the sense that they focus it on the things that are important to you, that are relevant to you. Why should I focus on studying this topic and not that topic? Because this topic's more interesting to me. That doesn't mean it's a better topic in any kind of you know, a universal sense, but this is more interesting to me. So my interests are guiding what I study, but the only way I can study it is using reason. What shouldn't be intervening in reason is emotion. Emotion, while important because it's how we experience life, it's how we you know, experience ourselves and life and everything around us. It's not a tool of cognition. It's not a tool of reason, and it often gets in the way. Yeah.
So I think people get very confused about this because there's a seemingly false dichotomy. Either you go by emotion and that's your tool of cognition, which it isn't, as you've said, or reason is somehow antithetical to emotion altogether, which is also not true. Reasoning, as you pointed out, has to be motivated, and motivation is an emotion. That's right.
Yes, so the conclusions you come to through reason will ultimately determine your emotions in the future. So your emotions are just automatic responses to conclusions you have already come to. And, so they're based on conclusions. They're based on hopefully reasoning, but not always. Sometimes mistaken reasoning, sometimes lack of thinking, just a conclusion that's not based on facts. And so we shape our own emotions, not consciously, but by coming to certain conclusions over time and integrating. This is where integration is so important. Integrating our knowledge into every aspect of our lives, our emotions ultimately change to fit the evaluations that we've made. And as your emotions are more consistent with your thinking, you can trust your emotions more. But you always recognize that it's not a tool of cognition. If it's teaching you anything, it's teaching you about yourself, about your own responses to certain phenomena, to certain occurrences in reality. It's not teaching you about reality. It's only teaching you about you and how you respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just ran a session with some students all about the philosophy of emotions the other day. So I wish we had recorded this before that so they could listen to it. So let's go back to the original question I was asking. I asked about the best and the worst in the world. We covered the worst. Let's move on to the best, and then we've got some positive things that I want to ask you about too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best is what you see in technology, in business and technology. What you see is people innovating, seeking new discoveries, trying to improve the world around them, trying to create new stuff, trying to understand the world. So if you look at a field like biotech or something like that, trying to cure diseases, and to do that, understand causal relationship between different molecules and cells, and whatever the field is. And that's where the most exciting thing is happening. It's happening in tech and science, and particularly in the intersection between tech and science. Science, unfortunately, can go in a bad direction, in a sense of it can get detached from reality and can become just a game that scientists place in their own mind. But once you integrate it with technology, with it, you have to have a product at the end of the day. It has to be connected to reality. It has to connect to real values, and it has to connect it to the real world. So you see that in biotechnology, you see that in computer science, you see that in certain areas like that. And that's where I think the best stuff happens. That's where you find people who are ambitious, who love their work. The entrepreneurial spirit is something that I think is incredibly positive. And places that have people who have a lot of that entrepreneurial spirit, who are willing to go out and take risks and do new things and challenge themselves and push themselves. That's where exciting things are happening, and that's where it's fun.
Yes. And it's so cool when a young person is actually encouraged, if they already have that disposition, to go and pursue something they're really ambitious about. After all,
that absolutely
is kind of the whole point of life, right? It's to achieve your happiness, and productive activity is the primary means through which that is achieved. Great. So let's talk about the objectivist movement. You would have been around since kind of the beginning of the movement. You were, I guess we could call you a second cultural generation of objectivists. So the first would be everyone who knew Ayn Rand, like Leonard Peikoff, and then there were the people that he taught, like you.
Yep.
So how has it evolved through your life?
Well, I mean, when I read Atlas Shrugged for the first time, I was 16, and there was no internet. I was living in Israel at the time, and I thought I was the only person who'd read this book and taken it seriously in the world. I didn't know there were other people, and I didn't know she was alive. Nothing. I mean, you're stuck in some. I mean, there's no easy source of information. I mean, the internet has, in profound ways, changed our lives in ways that I think people way underappreciate the extent to which. I mean, as somebody who's bridged, kind of lived before the internet and post-internet, The internet is a massive improvement in quality of life. So, there was a movement in the United States. It was really focused around newsletters that people would get in the mail. Once in a while, you would be able to go and see Ayn Rand speak. She gave regular talks in Boston once a year, and maybe at a university or something. But it was very rare. There was in the 70s and early 80s. There was really nothing else going on. There was in the 80s, there was maybe a conference once every 2 years that you could go to. But other than that, if you lived somewhere where there was a small group of objectivists around you, maybe you had some contact with others. People used to listen to Leonard Peikoff's courses on audio cassette. And there were all kinds of weird rules about how you could listen to and who could listen, and you had to rent them, you couldn't own them. And I have no idea what the rationale for all that was, but it was very strange, and it was very expensive. If you were a student, good luck. I mean, you basically could read. For me, I read what I could. I read all the nonfiction, read all the fiction, and that's it. There was nothing else beyond that I could get access to. So the big changes today, you have access to everything Ayn Rand wrote, everything she said, all her lectures. It's just all available, and a lot of it is free. You can access a lot of stuff on the internet for free. And then there's all of Leonard Peikoff's courses that he did, while he was writing OPA, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand, his book. After he wrote that, every single course he did, which really are the courses that lay the foundation for deeper understanding of objectivism and lay the foundation of objectivism as a philosophy together with OPA. You have access to all of that for free. All of that's available. And then you have access to all the, lectures and writings of all his students, right? So, and of course, you've got his books, The Ominous Parallels, OPA, and DIM. So they're all there. And then there's all the other books that are the essays on every single novel and advanced essays on this and that. So there's such a huge quantity of, I haven't read everything, right? And there was a point, I'm sure, in the 1980s where I'd read everything, right? Because all there was Ayn Rand and Ominous Parallels. There was only objectivist content. And there were some other essays by other people in the books, in Ayn Rand's books, but that was it. And today you can't keep track. You can't keep up with it. And then, of course, today there are podcasts, and the Institute is putting out videos and articles every single day. And other people are putting out, and there's a conference every year, but then the regional conferences, the smaller conferences, and the people. Nikos is just doing a tour of the United States right now and giving talks, and I'm giving talks, and other people are giving talks, and there's just and the community groups all over the country, and groups getting together. So there's just a unbelievable amount quantity. The quantity is just unbelievable in terms of the quantity of material and engagement that people can have within this world of objectivism. So it's grown.
It's a good time to be an objectivist, especially an objectivist.
Absolutely. And you can, as you know, you can take courses at the Ayn Rand Institute. You can get your degree in philosophy while also learning philosophy with Ankar Gate. You can and you can be in Australia and do it. That's the other thing, right? So I didn't really meet any of the intellectuals in objectivism until I moved to the United States. How else would I? There was no Zoom. There was no, and you didn't even make phone calls because long distance phone calls were super expensive. So there was no way to communicate across space. So today you could be literally anywhere in the world, take courses, interact, watch podcasts, and be engaged with what I think is a vibrant, engaged community. So it's so different. You discovered my podcast because of YouTube, or my lecture because of YouTube, nothing else. And that was new, right? 2019. How long had I been videotaping lectures? YouTube is a phenomena. We started putting up material in YouTube in 2008, 2009, something like that. So it's only 10 years before that. It's all new. And now suddenly it's a global movement, whereas before it was a much narrower movement. So yeah, I mean, it's the movement itself. There, and part of that means that there are lots of people out there who think they're objectivists who are not. There are lots of people out there who speak as if they're objectivists who are not. So, one of the things that people being introduced to this material, there's a lot more judgment now. You have to figure out who is and who isn't, who's good and who's not, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. There's a lot of crap out there, in addition to a lot of good stuff out there. But that's just a sign of growth. That's just a reflection of the fact that there's a lot of growth going on.
Yeah, and I, like with myself, try to be very realistic about what I do and do not know. So, yeah, I like the term student of objectivism because that sort of absolves you of being expected to know every aspect of objectivism and so on. And
yeah, but I don't know every aspect of objectivism, but I still consider myself.
Well, yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's safe to say you are certainly an objectivist by any standard, right?
I think so. I think so. And I've studied every aspect of objectivism. That I've read everything by Ayn Rand. I've studied Opa several times. I've gone over the book several times. Could I teach every aspect of objectivism? No, but I certainly have studied every aspect of it.
Yeah, and it's probably a different thing to be an objectivist versus being an objectivist philosopher, an objectivist intellectual. So I think is it safe to say an objectivist is somebody who understands the outline of Ayn Rand's philosophy and does their best to live according to those principles?
Yeah, understands it and accepts it as guiding philosophy and then tries to live by it. That is an objectivist. And an objectivist intellectual is somebody who does that and tries to apply that philosophy to a variety of issues. And objectivist philosopher is somebody who does work in philosophy guided by the objectivist philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned that there's this broad, sprawling objectivist movement. Just to be clear, though, it's still very, very small. It's a tiny, tiny part of the culture, unfortunately. But, it's growing.
It's bigger than
a lot of that.
I'll take that.
Sorry?
It's much bigger than it used to be.
Yes, that's right. So let's discuss the future of that. And also, like in any intellectual movement, there are going to be schisms. There's going to be disagreements between people who all say that they agree with the philosophy, and maybe some of them all do, and maybe you'll have different cases. But Onkar Ghate and Harry Binswanger co-wrote an article a few years ago called "Navigating Schisms in the Objectivist Movement," and that was an interesting article. But there are going to be legitimate disagreements. I believe you've disagreed with other prominent objectivists about concrete issues like immigration and so on. And I disagree with some of my friends on those issues too. And I do not doubt for a second that they are genuine objectivists. So what does and does not constitute a legitimate scope of disagreement between objectivists?
I mean, I think that the disagreement can be on the core ideas of objectivism, as articulated by Ayn Rand. That is, it's her philosophy. To call yourself an objectivist means that you're agreeing with her philosophy. That is the thing that she wrote. So if you think, yeah, I'm with Ayn Rand on reason, but this egoism stuff, I don't know about that, it would be wrong to call yourself an objectivist. And I would say, that there's certain principles that she clearly articulates that if you disagree with, then just don't call yourself an objectivist. That's fine. I mean, you disagree. People disagree all the time, but just don't call yourself the thing that she called her philosophy. But then when it comes to applying the philosophical ideas or certain technical aspects of the ideas, I think there's legitimate scope for disagreement. There's legitimate. We have different contexts of knowledge. We might emphasize different things, weight different things in our reasoning, and come to slightly different conclusions about them. I think the differences are not going to be huge and not going to be large. Particularly after you get an opportunity to really debate them and discuss them for if it's a legitimate disagreement, but there can be some. But when it comes to the philosophical principles and the basic philosophical ideas, I think if you're going to call yourself an objectivist, you have to have adherence to those.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's an issue of abstract philosophy versus applications. That's pretty much what I thought too.
I think mostly, I mean, you could disagree about abstract philosophy. You could, there's certain issues in the objectivist epistemology that I'm sure are complicated and not everybody completely agrees on. And that's probably that seems like a legitimate disagreement. It could be a legitimate disagreement, but I don't think you could disagree on the very formulation of the objectivist theory of concept formation and say, no, we form concept completely differently and still be an objectivist, right? But there might be some technical aspects of I don't have an example right now, but there could be some technical aspects that you could disagree on. And objectivism is not equal to the truth. Objectivism is also not equal to all knowledge. That is, she didn't have something to say about everything, and you can't, because knowledge is constantly growing. So they could be ideas that are not part of objectivism, but are consistent with it. And in that sense, the philosophy, qua philosophy, truth, qua truth, is constantly growing, whereas objectivism is what Ayn Rand said it was.
Yeah, that's right. So I recently took Harry Binsoinger's Objectivist Logic course at ARU. And one of the points he made was, strictly speaking, there's no objectivist logic because Ayn Rand didn't have a whole theory of logic. She accepted deduction from Aristotle and never got to induction, really. She did point out that that was a very important thing to do, and then Leonard Peikoff did it. But, well...
Yeah, and even Leonard said what he did is not objectivism, qua objectivism. That is, objectivism is what Ayn Rand, that's how she named her philosophy. So if you add stuff on, it's your addition to the things you think are consistent with, but it doesn't it doesn't automatically become objectivism.
Yep, I actually think that was extremely wise of Leonard Peikoff to kind of close that off, to close off the philosophy and say, this is what objectivism is. You're welcome to add on to it, but then whatever you add on is an objectivism, even if you can prove that it somehow is logically consistent with objectivism.
Yeah, and I think that, she did that. By naming it and by making it clear what she considered objectivism.
Mm-hmm. Right, yes, she did it. Okay, so what recent developments are you excited about at ARI?
A number of them. I think that we've launched this incubator for new intellectuals at ARI, where we're actively engaged in training, but training through doing, training through action. The kind of younger generation of intellectuals, and we hope this creates a real pipeline into the future of people writing and speaking and engaging in intellectual activity. At the end of the day, to change the culture and to really become a large movement, we're going to need a lot of intellectuals. And to do that, we need to create a real pipeline of them. And I think the incubator, where people are encouraged to start a Substack and to have a YouTube channel and to actually be engaged in intellectual activity as the material that they're producing is being reviewed and analyzed, and they're getting suggestions and recommendations and to continue to grow and learn. I think that is a great step forward, and hopefully will produce the kind of funnel, a kind of pipeline that will result in many intellectuals, dozens of intellectuals coming out of the program in the years to come.
Yeah, speaking to some of the people my age at Ocon was very impressive. So they're not the typical, they're not the stereotypical Gen Z. Yeah. In fact, you did a video, I think about a month ago, talking about Gen Z, and I agreed with everything you said. It was a bit of a rant, but I fully agree with it. But no, these people are super ambitious. They're definitely my kind of people.
Really many of them are not Gen Z. Even many of them are millennials, so we have a wide range of ages within the incubator, and but there's real talent there. There's a lot of really intelligent, really able people who I think are now if you will, the third generation. Or I don't know exactly how you break off the generations, but the third generation of objectivist intellectuals who will go out there and hopefully on a much larger scale than even we have, that me and other people of my generation have done, bring these ideas to the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. let's talk about Ayn Rand's fiction. So I've never heard you talk about, I'm sure you've talked about it somewhere, but it's not the first thing someone comes across if they look up Yaron Brook on YouTube. What are your favorite things about Ayn Rand's fiction? And then I've got a couple scenes that I love to share with you, and maybe you can share your favorites too.
I mean, it's a tough question. So one of my favorite things, I mean, I love the novels. I love her descriptive abilities, and particularly her characterizations. She has these incredible human beings that she depicts that are going through very, very dramatic events in their own lives and in the world around them, and they deal with it. They model how to deal with those kind of events, and how to deal with life, and how to live life fully. So yes, I love her descriptions of, if you will, the inner life of some of these characters. I love the scenes where Dagny is just listening to music, is relaxing and listening to music, or the flip side where she's confronted with a real challenge in front of her, and she jumps into action, and she's in action mode and solving problems. Maybe one of my favorite scenes in Atlas Shrugged is in the opening of the John Galt line, the description of Dagny and Reardon, in the engine, of the train hurling, over the bridge and along the railway line, and there's just a passion and an energy there that's really quite sexual. It's not an accident that then they have sex later, but it's a very sensual scene, even though it's about Dagny and the machine, right, and then the rail and the technology.
I remember that scene. I think she says it says she had wanted to see them, the motors, because the sense of life within her was bound to them and to what they represented.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's great writing. But the whole scene is great writing. Everything about it is great writing. So I love that about it. So yeah, I mean, those are the kind of scenes that particularly resonate with me.
Do you have a favorite scene in We the Living?
Oh wow, We the Living. Favorite scene in We the Living. I mean, I love the scene where they first meet, where they first meet under the lamp in the street, where he thinks she's a prostitute, and she's kind of playing with that. I love the playfulness of that scene, but also the real intensity and the emotion of it, and the way they respond to each other is, and you already get the essence of their characters from that scene.
And I love that scene too. But what's really cool is that the restored version of the film by Duncan Scott actually captures that really well.
Yep.
I watched it with a few Objectivist friends in Melbourne. We bought it, and it was the music that plays when they meet, and it's the same music every time. It's just the two of them.
It's a brilliant movie. It's a brilliant movie. It's really We the Living. If you haven't seen it, you guys should go see it, because it's the best movie of an Ayn Rand novel, and the director was exceptional. The actors are really, really brilliant. It really is good.
My favorite scene in terms of the writing in We the Living is the last scene, but I won't read it because that's a spoiler.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, what I would do is I would like to read something that is. You said characterization is one of your favorite aspects of Rand's fiction. I think this is a very good characterization of Kira, the heroine of the film, of the book.
Yep.
So this is about her childhood. Kira had never been in love. The only hero she had known was a Viking whose story she had read as a child. A Viking whose eyes never looked farther than the point of his sword, but there was no boundary to the point of his sword. A Viking who walked through life, breaking barriers and reaping victories, who walked through ruins while the sun made a crown over his head, but he walked light and straight without noticing its weight. A Viking who laughed at kings, who laughed at priests, who looked at heaven only when he bent for a drink over a mountain brook, and there, overshadowing the sky, he saw his own picture, a Viking who lived but for the joy and the wonder and the glory of the God that was himself. So that is just a radiant statement of egoism.
Yep. It's quite beautiful.
Yeah.
And she had this spirit of a love of heroes. I mean, I think that's somewhat autobiographical. There's a real sense in which there are aspects of Kira that are Ayn Rand, and I think that admiration as a child for heroes, for men of action, that is very autobiographical.
It is beautiful. There's an interesting thing I can share about this, actually. Have you been to St. Petersburg?
I have. Yeah.
You have. Have you seen that bridge that Ayn Rand references about halfway through the novel, with the 4 statues, one on each corner? Yeah, that's called the Anchikov Bridge. Okay, so you know it then. I saw that bridge when I visited St. Petersburg for the first time when I was 15, and I'm Russian. So, I love that bridge. I love the statue. In fact, the statue I liked most was the one in which the horse is about to trample the man, the very first of the 4 series. So that tells you a bit about the malevolent universe I lived in before discovering objectivism, right? But I thought it was so beautiful. And then I read this, many years later, I was like, wait a second, Ayn Rand was at this bridge and she admired the same thing I did.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting, it was one of those coincidences, you know?
Yeah, I've twice I've been to St. Petersburg. I've given talks there.
Right, you've given talks in St. Petersburg. Yeah, it's we can talk about Russia shortly. So, right. Also in the Fountainhead, my favorite scenes are the last one, Dominique in the elevator, and Howard Rourke speaking to the boy in the valley, the boy on the bicycle.
Yeah, of course, that is beautiful, and there's the start of temple, the description of the temple, and everything that happens. There's just him in the quarry is even an incredibly powerful scene. So when Dominique sees him for the first time, so
well, actually,
I mean, it's stunning to me that people think she couldn't write, because she's an amazing writer, and her descriptions, characterizations are just so vivid and so so infused with emotion, which is what literature and art should be. They really captivate you, and they really entice you and into the novel, into the world, the universe she's creating.
Actually, you pointed out that some people criticize Ayn Rand for not being a good writer.
Yeah,
that is this. I mean, that has got to be one of the worst insults you could level at her. That, like, in the sense of the most inapplicable, the most absolutely unbased. In fact, I think she understood the reasons for it, why she was disapproved of by the literati of her time. And here's a quote that I read when reading The Goal of My Writing yesterday, that I thought was relevant to what you just pointed out. And Ben Bayer brought it up in the last OCON, and the quote is, "It is a significant commentary on the present state of our culture that I have become the object of hatred, smears, denunciations, because I am famous as virtually the only novelist who has declared that her soul is not a sewer, and neither are the souls of her characters, and neither is the soul of man."
Yep. Yeah. I mean, she's the last romantic, and they can't tolerate romanticism unless it's malevolent. So they love Dostoevsky, but you don't see many people liking Hugo. Even Hugo is not that appreciated because he's too positive. So they don't want the heroic. They don't want the beautiful. They don't want the man as glorified. They want
That's right.
They want to live in this world.
Yeah. Of course, Rand was a tremendous fan of Hugo. I recently wrote a very short blog post about that. There was just to give you an idea of the kind of to give the audience an idea of the romanticism that Hugo brings to bear on his work. There's a quote that makes perfect sense out of context, and the quote is, I saw in the street a very poor young man who was in love. His coat was threadbare, his hat was old, There were holes in his elbows. The water went through his shoes and the stars through his soul. So I think the idea is when the stars are through your soul because you're in love, you don't notice the water passing through your shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, this is really cool. Speaking with you about aesthetics, it's not something I often hear you speak about, and it's I think we'll bring some value to the audience. All right, let's. I'm doing this with a heavy heart to take it from all the beautiful things we've been talking about to something quite serious. So let's go on to politics.
Beauty is serious.
Pardon?
Beauty is serious.
Oh, beauty is serious, but I meant
I know.
more like depressing. Yeah. So let's start with libertarianism. Do you think? Do you think libertarianism is helping or harming the objectivist cause?
I mean, I think one has to separate libertarians out. I think libertarianism as a big tent umbrella is hurting, but within that big tent, there are libertarians who do good work and who ultimately support, at least in a particular realm, in economics and politics, the thing that we are fighting for as well. But there are libertarians within that umbrella who do it a lot of harm, not even a little bit, but a lot of harm. And so I think primarily the anarcho-capitalists, the so-called anarcho-capitalists, because you can't be anarchist and a capitalist. So the anarchists, basically undermine and undercut the real values of liberty and freedom. They undermine and undercut the real essence of what the purpose of freedom is and what it means. And in that sense, they confuse young people, they distract them, and they do harm to, I think, the long-term prospects of freedom. They also tend to be moral subjectivists, and in that sense, they divorce the idea of liberty from the idea of morality, and that does a lot of harm. And then, of course, as a consequence of their moral subjectivism and their anarchy, they're often just wrong on so many real policy issues, from foreign policy to immigration to a lot of other things. They just don't get it. They're just really, really bad. It's not just that they don't get it. Many of their positions are downright evil. And so because objectivists often are lumped in with them because we're all supposedly free market, even though we're not, the fact that their ideas in many realms are so wacky and crazy, by association hurts us. But also, I think it's just a distraction. I think a lot of young people who would otherwise potentially be attracted to objectivism get caught up in the kind of the rationalism of some libertarians.
Yeah. There's a lot to say about this. Let's take anarchists, because they're some of the, I assume, in the worst category here.
Yeah.
And a good example that comes to mind, who is kind of a mixed as a person. In fact, you did a debate with him, Michael Malice, on Lex Friedman, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of him in some ways. I think he's got a great sense of humor. Everything he denounces, not quite everything, but a lot of things that he denounces, he's perfectly right to denounce. I mean, very much against totalitarianism and so on. But when he starts speaking about the justification for anarchism, that is no government, it just makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't have to explain why here, but it's very interesting to see.
But there's even in a sense of humor, though, there's a certain element of nihilism there. So I think and that fits in with the anarchy. I think there's a certain sense in which they get that anarchy is destructive, and that's what makes it cool.
Oh, that's a very good point. I never even thought. So you think it's motivated by nihilism?
I think there's an element, for most anarchists, yes, it's motivated by, whether it's motivated by nihilism for him, I don't know. It might be different, but there's something in his humor that I think has nihilistic elements, and I think generally somebody who's committed to anarchy has to realize the destructive consequences and is to some extent motivated by nihilism.
Yeah, I mean, well, the obvious point against anarchy is that it would just descend into all-out gang warfare. The strongest gang would eventually control everything, and that's called totalitarianism.
Yep.
Aristotle predicted that, and I mean, it makes perfect sense. So what you need is a government that protects your individual rights against foreign invaders through the military, through domestic force, such as criminals, pickpockets, and so on, and murderers, and of course to enforce contracts via the courts. But also the government has to protect you against itself via constitutional checks and balances. And if you have two competing governments, or God forbid, you know, a million competing governments in a country with 1 million people, well, how is anybody going to be subjected to the same rules of objective litigation? And I mean, I don't think this requires an awful lot of thinking to understand.
No,
and it does.
And you know, and again, you know, some anarchists are nicer human beings, right? I mean, Malice is a nice guy, but you know, somebody like Brian Kaplan, really nice guy and smart, super smart, and does interesting work on a lot of things. But others are just, you know, creepy. You know, Dave Smith and some of the economists associated with the Mises Institute. They're just creepy weirdos, and I think they do a lot of damage to the cause of liberty and freedom.
All right, let's go on to U.S. foreign policy, and I don't want to linger on this too long, but we have to include it because it's so important. Of course, the major conflicts in the world today are Israel, Gaza, or Israel, Hamas, and Russia, Ukraine. So let's do Russia, Ukraine. That I understand that conflict a little bit better. What do you think of the? So I recently saw the drones going into. I didn't see them. I read about the drones that went into Poland and Estonia. I don't know if other countries have had drones, Russian drones. So do you think NATO is appeasing that, basically? I mean, they're wagging their finger, but then they don't seem to be doing anything in the way of actual retaliation. And is this just emboldening Putin? Do you think Putin wants to invade Europe outside of Ukraine?
I mean, I think he wants to. I think Putin's goal is to create conflict within NATO, to poke them and prod them and see what happens. I think he got some indications that Trump might not support NATO defending itself against Russia, or that the United States will let NATO do it but not participate. He's trying to figure all that out, and the best way to figure that out is to prod it and see what happens, and not commit too much because he doesn't want to go to war with NATO, because I think even Putin realizes that a war with NATO would finish him. I mean, he would be destroyed. So he doesn't want to go until he's convinced that he can win, or that he can have the upper hand. So he continues to prod and poke and see what happens. I think NATO has mostly responded, weakly, but at least it's hanging together. And there is some indications the United States wouldn't abandon Europe, that it would fight alongside. And that's good, and that probably will keep Putin in check for now.
Okay, it's what's there to say, right? Do you think Russia has a chance at freedom? There seemed to be some chance for about 10 years in the 90s, and then Putin took power and gradually consolidated power, and that's kind of been going through my whole life. So Putin has been in power longer than I've been alive. What do you think are the chances for Russia?
I think they're not very high. I think that if there's a revolution tomorrow in Russia, it's more likely to be by people who think Putin is too weak and Putin is too soft, or Putin made a mistake in this war and Russia should be better prepared next time, but not people who reject war, reject Russian nationalism, or reject Russian mysticism. I just don't think there are enough liberal in the kind of classical liberal sense, people in Russia who are willing to really fight for those values. I think the better people are probably left. The people all over the world of Russian descent, there's a huge out-migration over the last, since the Berlin Wall came down, but certainly since this war. So I just don't see, and Ayn Rand had a very negative view of Russian culture and as a consequence of Russia's prospects. And I think she's basically right. Russia's too mystical, too collectivist, too immersed in its own past, and not enough on the future and on success and growth to actually achieve freedom and liberty. I mean, you never know, but I just think it's unlikely anytime.
Right. Now, let's move on to Israel. So, given that the hostages have now all been released, what should Israel be doing?
I mean, what Israel should do is go into Gaza and clean up. I mean, it should destroy Hamas. It should do everything in its power to completely destroy Hamas. It should not rely on some international peacekeeping force, on Trump's willingness to, or Trump's putting pressure on the Arab world to achieve something. Hamas will only be destroyed when it's destroyed, literally destroyed. And only Israel can do that. Nobody else will do that for it. The
destruction, you're setting the criteria is every person who is a member of Hamas is either dead or imprisoned.
Or in prison, or I guess you could kick them out of the country and deport them somewhere if some country is willing to accept them. But basically, the place is demilitarized. Weapons are gone. All the tunnels are destroyed. Every last tunnel is destroyed, and every last weapon is destroyed. And only then, I think Israel knows that it's won. It's over. It's finished. So that's what it should do. The likelihood of that happening is very low, though.
And what about the PLO, which has now been recognized as the official authority for the newly recognized Palestinian state, or recognized by the UN?
Yep.
How do you think about the PLO?
Well, I mean, the PLO is bad, but the PLO is not as bad as Hamas. Primarily because it doesn't have quite the same religious motivation. It's not driven as much by Islamist ideology. But yeah, I mean, ultimately the PLO needs to be disarmed. That is the West Bank. It's not so much Gaza. It needs to be disarmed. Israel needs to take control of the entire educational system of Palestinians. It needs to make sure that the Palestinian educational system that teaches hatred and anti-Semitism is dismantled and destroyed and replaced by something more positive. Yeah, I mean, Israel cannot allow the Palestinians to continue on the current ideological or current, kind of military direction they're in. On the other hand, look, Israel's in a strong position. It could probably survive the status quo for decades. It's just not optimal. It's just not ideal for it. It's not like if it doesn't do what I say, it's going to collapse tomorrow. It's just that if it did what I say, it would be in a much stronger, better position to handle the future.
Well, I think in general, if countries did what you say, they would be in a much better position, right?
I think
certainly if you look at what Leonard Peikoff said should be done after 9/11. If we
we
had
would
actually
be in a different world today. We would definitely be in a different world. And October 7th would have never happened.
And October 7th would have never happened. That's absolutely right. I actually have that thought every time I have to scan all my bags when going into the airport. I think this is an anti-terrorist measure that would be totally unnecessary if there were no terrorists. If we,
it's already unnecessary in many regards. But yes, it would definitely be unnecessary if you actually fought a war against the enemy and you fought it right, fought it the right way.
That's right. That's right. So just to clarify, is your position that all of those areas which are currently administered by the PLO should be administered by Israel? Because you said they should control the education system.
They should all be administered by Israel for at least a generation or two until the Palestinians have culturally matured enough to be able to take control of their own education and their own, handling their own affairs. And that will probably take 2 generations. At that point, a two-state solution is fine, or something else. I mean, there are lots of solutions once the Palestinians actually want peace and understand what peace requires.
Okay, I see. All right, so I would like to move on to your advice to people like me, that is, young objectivist intellectuals. So I guess, well, we'll start with the general. What advice do you have?
Well, I mean, it's twofold. One is study, really learn. Objectivism is easy in some ways and very hard in other ways. And to be an objectivist intellectual is hard. I've seen many people fail at it. I've seen many people be mediocre at it. And to be good at it, you have to really know the philosophy. You have to integrate it into everything, into your life, and into everything that you think about. And to do that, you have to really study and really learn it. And then you have to apply. And then you have to start writing and speaking and just doing stuff, and making sure that you're integrating. I really do think integration is the one thing that people don't know well enough how to do. Seeing connections between things, train your mind to see connection between things, focus on seeing connections between things, and then write. I mean, you can never write too much.
Yeah, I think Leonard Peikoff talked about a game they used to play, where they would put a bunch of objectivist ideas in a hat, like, for example, the law of identity.
Not objectivist ideas, all kinds of things in a hat, and
right. Any kind of true principle. And you would pull any two out and you would have to integrate the two. That's a pretty good game. It
is a good game.
I can't find anyone who wants to play it with me yet, but
that's too bad. It's a good game. It's challenging, and it can be fun, right? Particularly if you put the right concepts inside.
Yes.
They call it the concept in a hat, I think.
Concept in a hat. Okay. So what did you do, like, reflecting on your experience and eventually becoming an objectivist intellectual and an activist? How did that all go? And what did you learn? So what to do, what to avoid? I don't know. Save me the trouble by giving me the advance advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's tough because I don't think you can generalize from one data point. And I don't think you can generalize from your own experiences too much. You have to be careful doing that, because different people are going to have different experiences and deal with them in different ways. Again, learning and reading and objectivism, trying to find the best minds in objectivism and taking classes from them and learning from them and taking that seriously. And then trying to apply it. That is, engaging in an attempt to think about things in an original way, right? Tackling problems nobody else has tackled, or kind of issues that nobody else has dealt with, and testing yourself against that. And then I think playing kind of a concepts in a hat with yourself constantly. That is, if you read the news, try to see the connections between the stories. Like, take the front page of the newspaper, look at 3 stories. Well, what's the connection between these? What is common to all of them? What is driving all of them? Particularly if you want to become a cultural commentator, as I think I'm good at that, and I think that's how my mind just works. So I do that a lot. But yeah, learn, and then find people you really respect who have good minds and interact with them, right? Test yourself against them. And one of the things that is true in life generally, so not just as an objectivist intellectual, you have to be open to criticism. You have to be open to being told you're wrong, and you're badly wrong, and learn from that, and have the kind of attitude of, please critique me, right? If the criticism is good, I've learned. If the criticism is bad, I haven't lost anything. So there's never, you can't be hurt by criticism.
Yes, no, I totally agreed. And it is, just coming back to an earlier point I made, isn't it a great time to be a young objectivist, right? Like, I don't have the struggles you had when you were my age and getting into objectivism. I mean, I basically was alone for maybe 4.5, 5 years. I knew there was the Ayn Rand Institute, but I didn't know anyone from it. I never reached out. And then ARU took me in, and so on. And now this is an opportunity that's open to anyone who has ability and interest in the philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the last thing I wanted to ask you about was objectivism in academia. So one thing is that the internet has largely broken the stranglehold that academia holds on knowledge, and that includes philosophy. And it doesn't you don't need any labs to do philosophy. Anyone can do philosophy for free. So there's no issues there. And there's a lot of independent intellectuals on the internet, including some objectivists, some of whom are very good. So how should aspiring objectivist intellectuals or philosophers think about working in academia? I'm asking this for a very selfish reason. I'm considering it. I'm currently in academia, and I'm thinking what I want to do is have a sort of half career. So I want to have an academic career, and parallel, I also want to have a career, maybe a bit like yours, maybe not focusing on current politics, but sort of what you do in outline.
I mean, I think that you have to want to do the stuff that academics do, right? So you have to love that. You have to want to teach. You have to want to publish articles, and go through the process of publishing articles, which is not easy, and which is a real headache in academia. But you have to. I mean,
I'm discovering that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go into a field where you hate doing the things that you expected to do in that field, right? And if you go into academia, you're going to want to get tenure. To get tenure, you're going to have to publish. To publish, you're going to have to do the work that's required in order to publish. And if you don't want to do that, don't go into academia. So go into academia with the with the perspective of, I really want to do this stuff. I enjoy writing articles. I enjoy teaching. So it's a great career, particularly if you can do stuff on the side. It's a very stable life. It's very, once you get tenure, you're not going to be fired. You know exactly what you're going to be doing. It takes uncertainty out of life. If that's what you want, that's great. But it does require repetition, right? You teach and you teach and you teach and you write articles, and that's great if that's what you love doing.
The teaching I do love. I'm going to be teaching right after this, and I'm very much looking forward to it. It's the highlight of every week. That's I find opportunities to teach for free if I can, great. Right? Yeah, so I've established the Objectivist discussion group.
And the question is, do you have to be an academic to teach? So there are opportunities to teach. But academia requires you to do more than just teach. And although there are universities or colleges where you just have to teaching colleges, teaching universities, where or liberal arts schools where they don't expect you to publish. So there are all kinds of options, but the more you go into it with eyes open about what's required and what's necessary and what you like and what you don't like, and if you don't like to write, if you don't enjoy the process of writing articles, going into kind of an intense, research-oriented university it's going to suck. It's not fun.
Yeah, that's right. You said there were objectivists who you saw succeed and not so much as intellectuals. What do you think differentiated the former from the latter?
I mean, a lot of it is the willingness to do the work, right? The willingness to acknowledge what the work is necessary to be an intellectual, and then go do it, and commit to it. And it's a lot of work. It's not easy. The willingness to be isolated, right? You isolate for the rest of the intellectual community, at least somewhat, and to be willing to stand up and say, no, they're all wrong. And that's not necessarily easy, particularly when the people you're saying are wrong are really smart people.
Well, I am surrounded by a lot of very smart and very wrong people. So I understand. I understand what you mean. That's really the advantage of academia. I mean, people can be dead wrong, but they usually aren't stupid. There's not many stupid people in academia. Certainly not in
dishonest people. They're not stupid people.
Oh yeah, there's that too. I have to be very careful what I say, but yes, that's definitely true. All right, well, Yaron, before we wrap up, is there anything you would like the audience to know? I think people know you far better than they know me, so maybe about half my audience already knows you.
Okay. Well, the other half should check out my podcast.
Yes, they should.
Yaron Brook. You can check out my website, yaronbrookshow.com, where you get all the information, and hopefully, we'll meet up in Australia at some point at a talk I give or something like that. So at a conference or something that we do out there.
Well, that's how we did meet. In Brisbane.
We first met in Brisbane last year. Yeah.
And then at Ocon, and you very generously agreed to come on this podcast. And again, I just want to say, if not for you, I don't know if I would have discovered Objectivism.
That's great.
And now behind me, I recently got this made. That's
nice.
That's Ayn Rand. And it says her quote from the Romantic Manifesto: "Anyone who fights for the future lives in it today."
Absolutely. Good.
Great. Well, Yaron, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Keep doing what you're doing. And I hope that you introduce Objectivism to many more people like myself.
Good, and I'm looking forward to you being one of our intellectuals that are out there doing this work.
Thank you. Bye-bye.